So look at this. This is probably one of the most interesting things that's come in the last 24, 48 hours, right? And there's been a lot of things hammered out by Trump. He's after signing a lot of things, but this could be up there as one of the most important, or it could lead to one of the most important, right? So we'll have a read of this. This is from CNN. Headline from, when's it from? Yeah, today, right? So the Trump administration directs federal health agencies to pause communications. So, amid a deluge of executive actions, the Trump administration has directed federal health agencies to pause external communications, such as regular scientific reports, updates to websites, and health advisories, according to sources within the agencies. So we'll have a little pause on that, right? So if you look at some of the big stories that have come out, and some of the more negative stories that have come out about what Trump is after talking about in the last day, right? One of them was his comments on the investment coming into America to further develop AI in order to create mRNA technologies that could aid in certain illnesses and cures, right? And he drew a lot of ire for that from people who are just hear mRNA, think of COVID and the knee-jerk response. Rightly so, right, as well in degrees, but we need to calm after that initial response and evaluate the information and evaluate the way the winds are blown, okay? We can't just take one little thing and be hooked into it emotionally, right? We have to get over that. There's obviously going to be, because COVID is so close in time, still a lingering emotional response to it. But we also need to recognize that we can't stay in that emotional response, because once we're staying in that emotional response, we're lacking clarity when we're looking at information, right? So, so people had that response to the mRNA and they're saying, see, look, he's only in there now and he's banging on about mRNA vaccines. Lads, if you've been observing what Trump has been doing over the last 4 years, he appears to be constantly baiting people, right? Baiting people, drawing attention to certain peoples, right? Posing with them in pictures, talking about them in positive ways, like he's a great guy, right? And then a few weeks later, this fella's being investigated or whatever, right? So you see this continuously. Or what happens is the world turns their focus onto these people, and the people have been investigating the people that have been highlighted, right? And then bang, people are producing massive amounts of information on things, right? He's getting the world to look at certain things. And that's the way I'm seeing it, right? And that's the way I'll argue it. Always been open to the fact that I could be totally wrong, and I'm perfectly okay with that, right? Because when I'm wrong, I'm learning. When I'm right, I'm learning I'm right. So either way, you're learning, right? So you shouldn't be afraid of either avenue. But what he's doing here, from my eyes, is drawing the world's attention back to the mRNA technology, which gets people thinking of COVID again, right? Because a lot of people seem to have forgotten about the worst case of tyranny we've ever seen in our lifetimes being imposed on us, right? And we just seem to have sleptwalked from that into the Ukraine war and forgotten all about them things, while the very same people are still in power who committed those acts, those criminal acts, those immoral acts, right? They treated us worse than a pet dog, you know? If the dog is rabies, get out. If the dog is fleas, kick him into the shed and leave him in there, right? If there's the potential for you getting a cold or the flu, bang, you're getting locked into your house away from everyone. Crazy carry on, you know? People treat their pets better than that. And we just accepted that and walked away from it as if the story's over now, and we move on into other things that we funneled our attention and energy into, right? We just played the game of following the string as it was being pulled from us, and we followed it down the road, right? But what Trump is after doing, or a result of what he's after doing here, is drawing the world's attention back to COVID with the mention of mRNA technology. And now you see this story coming out from the agencies, or about the agencies that were involved in promoting that hysteria and trying to convince the world that everyone was a potential threat to their life. So you should avoid them. You should get off the footpaths when someone's passing you. You shouldn't breathe the same air as them. You shouldn't be in the same room as them. You know? Crazy stuff. And if they're dying, you shouldn't even be in near them. You can talk to your grandparents in a nursing home through the window, right? While all these politicians were still flying off places and having golf parties, right? Totally laughing at the fact that you were following this stuff when they're on television not following it. Do you know what I mean? They have to be laughing at you because we deserve to be laughed at for accepting that. They flouted it in your face that they were breaking the laws that they were enforcing you to do, or trying to force you to do, and getting the guards and police and whatever to arrest you if you were doing just the same thing that they were doing. And they were showing you live on telly at times, right? And people still followed it because they were reacting with fear to it. They weren't trusting what they were seeing with their own eyes, right? That these people are intolerably corrupt. They're criminal. They're liars. They're deceivers. They're cowards because they won't come out and say. They have to make you read between the lines, right? They won't come out and explicitly say it to you. They're cowards. And they proved that, right? So, all involved as well. All involved. And to each individual person, you know your part that you played in this nonsense. Because very few people had their hands clean in this. Because there was people, regular people, your neighbours, people you see walking through the town regularly, people that serve you in the shops, right? There was people that were ready to grass their neighbours up, their family members up for doing things. There's probably people that did do it, but there were certainly people that were ready to pull triggers on people because they weren't doing what they were told by the government, right? So there was a whole lot of crazy and a whole lot of evil leaking out of people over these years, and our attention's being drawn back to that, right? So everyone involved, from whatever level of society it was, all the way to the media, to school teachers, to people, to parents, right, to everyone. We all have to evaluate our parts in that and see how clean our hands are in it, and how tyrannical we got and dictatorial we got, telling people you need to wear a mask to be here, right? That's been proven to be nonsense. It didn't even need to be proven after the fact to be nonsense. It was already proven in all medical literature prior to it that masks were ridiculous. You could blow smoke out through the things, right? Smoke particles are obviously bigger than any bacteria or anything like that. So if smoke can come out of the masks, what do you think bacteria will do? It wouldn't have to force its way through. It would do cartwheels through the holes in the mask, right? Size comparison, or relative to size. So all involved in this from an American standpoint. The federal health agencies involved in that. So in the Irish context, the HSE, things like that, right? All of these orgs and government organizations and government departments, right? They were involved in promoting this stuff and amplifying it with shoddy studies that many of these places had to retract, right? Or stop endorsing because they were proven to have been nearly totally fraudulent. You know? Scientifically misleading at best and absolute lies at worst, right? But either way, deceptive in nature, okay? Because the counter-argument to these things, the counter-argument from other scientists against these papers and reports and releases that were coming out were banned. Doctors lost their licenses for coming out speaking out about this stuff. And all they were doing was critically analysing it and trying to share that with the public. You know, they weren't necessarily denouncing anything. They're just saying, look, here's how the science doesn't work. Or here's how the argument in this quote-unquote scientific literature doesn't add up. Here are the logical flaws in these things. And let's ask some more questions before we start forcing people into camps, right? Or getting on that road where we want to do that. Because that happened as well. There was camps and stuff built, right? So crazy, crazy times. So these health agencies, Trump is after freezing them from releasing, I'll read it again, external communications such as regular scientific reports, right? So you will not get any new reports stating perhaps the discovery of a new crazily contagious virus, right? You're not going to get any of those things in concert from these health agencies as of now. So I'll get to that, right? Regular scientific reports, updates to websites and health advisories. So nothing new is going to be coming out from these places. You know? So if you're looking at these organizations as peddling in propaganda, the most hideous form of propaganda, where they are selling it as life-saving knowledge and the wisdom of the sages of the white coats, right? They're selling it as this is what the public needs to understand and to follow in order for them to survive over the next year. That's what they were selling. Crazy stuff. Absolute psychological shock treatment to people. That's what they were peddling in. And that's certainly the effect it had on many people. So if you view it as that sort of propaganda, what this is saying is there's a freeze on these departments and organizations from being able to release any new studies, any new arguments, medical arguments for things, right? So that will no longer be a problem. You're not going to get that steady flow of propaganda you've been getting. So the stream of influence, the stream of the repetitive releases from experts and scientists and the CDC have just discovered such and such. That stuff that kept people in a their mind like looking through dirty water, underwater, right? And murky, through a glass darkly sort of thing. Right? That steady stream is disrupted now. It's stopped. The tap has been turned off. You're no longer going to be getting soaked in that stuff, which will free people up. It'll unshackle their minds. It'll allow their minds to unshackle themselves and start to think about things again, question things, evaluate things with a fresh lens, right? Great stuff. The great potential here. So no more regular scientific reports, updates to websites and health advisories, right? So no longer will you get that anymore. Now, that's the psychological and social potentials, possible potentials from this. I wouldn't even say possible. I just think the very fact that these things have been frozen means there will be that effect, right? So people's minds will start to thaw out and start to catch fire again, right? Imagination and good thinking will come to the fore again in people's minds as they wake up, right? Their mind has been snapped out of it. And it'll have the freedom to think again. It'll free itself to think again, which is a beautiful thing. Now, and on to potentially the criminal argument, or the criminal aspect of this story, or the potential for the criminal act, right, aspect, is these organizations will not get to spend the next month or 2 months or 6 months or 2 years slowly backtracking on things that they have promoted unanimously over the last 4 years, right? They won't get to backtrack on that and go, well, look, what we've recently discovered is we may have been wrong before, but we were wrong in the right way, sort of a thing, right? So or being wrong previously, and thanks to the glory of the scientific method, we now have the ability, right, to correct ourselves and learn from our mistakes. Facts change, right? This sort of nonsense that's peddled. Facts change. What? Like that facts are discovered. Truth is discovered or uncovered, right? It doesn't change really. At least in these short periods of time thing, right? So because according to science as well, like facts are objective facts and they'll remain that way, right? So everything that these agencies have been promoting for the last few years, that will be like their final say on the topic. So if they can't release anything new about COVID or mRNA or any of that stuff, or anything really, about anything, their final word could be said to be the very last few things they've been promoting, right? Or the position they've held on the last few things that they've been speaking about. Which means if you go in and investigate them and start pulling out their files and reevaluating the research they conducted, all that sort of stuff, internal communications, what was that like? Was what people were saying on television different than what they were saying in private emails about this stuff, right? Was there evidence that people knew that this was lies? Was there evidence that people lied about this? Was there evidence that people benefited from this in whatever way? If you go in and try and route that stuff out, which could very well happen to these organizations, right? It could very well happen. That's a positive thing because they're being held at their word now, right? And I think the potential in this is massive. And it's couple that then with the pardon to Anthony Fauci and the attention that draws right back onto the COVID stuff. And with him, AIDS, issues like that prior to COVID, right? But the scope, the position we're in and the opportunity we're in now to really draw attention back to this and start to question people on every level of society, and particularly the people that we continuously vote in to look after or care, on the very topic of murdering people, right? And people dying and forcing people into total servitude and slavery, right? Where they were bound by every dictate that you came up with. Nonsense, right? So the potential for this is massive. And I think you're going to see some proper distractions, right? Um, Stories that don't add up to the magnitude of the potential in this story, but yet somehow gets 20 times the airtime. Never mind all that stuff. If you're talking to people, draw people's attention onto this story and tell them, look, we don't know what the outcome is, but no one can argue that the things people have been calling for, justice, proper investigations, the cessation of propaganda and lies in the science community and the media and the political world, right? This is a step. If you were to build steps as to how you'd seek justice, this could be one of them. So we have to accept what's positive in the world along with what's negative. And we've been so used to being fed negative stuff that you lose hope, and it's difficult to recognize a good thing when it's there, or we'll believe it too good to be true, therefore it must be a hoax or a distraction or a psyop or whatever, right? But this is positive stuff. And don't let anybody fool you into thinking that it's not positive stuff, because it is. The potential in this is great.